And everybody in favour? Yeah. Anyone against? Thank you. We've also sponsored, part-sponsored, the Early Music Festival's current May programme, which is with a Georgian theme. Now, what Chris has got here is this. It's this puzzle. Now, this is unique. Not as many politicians say very unique, because those of you, of course, being very cultured, will know there aren't degrees of uniqueness. It is unique, it's the only one, and it's been specially commissioned and put together. And you'll recognise it, of course. You'll recognise the picture. But who can identify, this is like a school lesson, who can identify the particular reason why we may have chosen this scene to present this to Chris as the puzzle we want him to do? Stephen?
The bollard.
The bollard. Oh. The bollard. Chris is well known locally, indeed throughout the East Riding, for his lecture, which has the most wonderful title of all lecture titles, A Load of Old Bollards. And it concludes with a special section on the bollard.
I must point out, I didn't originate that title. It was the late Chris Ketchell who came up with that title.
But what a wonderful title, A Load of Old Bollards. It's about street furniture. It's not wholly about bollards. Bollard, though, is an important part of street furniture. And you must admit that is a fantastic bollard. And it's going to get a particularly interesting bollard compared to a lot of bollards. And so Chris is going to have the delight with Sandra and possibly other people, because it's a very complicated puzzle. Look at that water. I mean, would you like to tackle that? And of course the final bit that Chris will reserve for the great climax, the culmination of doing the puzzle, will be the bollard. So thank you very much, Chris, for all your service. And we're very fortunate today that he's agreed to speak, give the Margaret Dibb Memorial Lecture.
Topic's slightly different from what you said because the dates are different, but there's two reasons for that. One, if I spoke to the full dates, we'd be here for a few, long time, couple of hours or more. And also there's a reason for doing 1640, which comes obvious there because it's the first time we've got a really good illustration of Hull as what it looked like through Holler's plan. We've got an expert on Holler's plan sitting here, so I have to be careful with Barbara to what I say, because Barbara did a lot of work to determine that it was around 1640, I think.
But this is a particularly interesting Beverley house because it's one we know exactly the date when it was built. It's one of the earlier houses of it's a Queen Anne house, so far more houses in Beverley are sort of mid-18th century onwards. And the reason we know the date is because in 1708, Beverley and East Riding had a registry of deeds that started. Only the three counties of Yorkshire and Middlesex were fortunate to have this. Saying East Riding started in 1708, just the year before this house was built, and it registers property transactions. To begin with, it wasn't compulsory to register transactions. Over time, it gradually did become compulsory, but lots of people did because it was a sort of security. So in 1709, so we've got this, it's in the archives in Beverley, a really good way of tracing house histories. And because it starts in 1708, and this house, or the house that was on the site of this one, was purchased in 1709, the deed was registered. Some people say they were coming to see Beverley Minster, but the other story is they're going to Hull, I think, which is probably much more likely that they're going to go and have a bit of fun somewhere. And apparently he got thrown from his horse when he was just a couple of miles somewhere up near Hull Bridge. and Dr. Johnson was sent for to look after him, and Dr. Johnson obviously decided he needed a bit of overnight care, so he brought him home to his house here. So the future William IV slept here. So genuinely have one of these rooms that says, this is William IV. They have in lots of houses, don't they?
And this circular double shelving comes over, rests on there. So I think you can imagine the tankards up there and someone serving from this round serving table.
Well, we thought it was contemporary with the house. I mean, it's certainly not any later than that. It's so it would have been put in when the house was built, and that's a typical thing to put in. You often find shoes. It's a sort of almost like a good luck charm.
Was it built into the wall or something?
It was built in right upstairs when the Joneses came 3 years before we did. They were having restoration work done right upstairs, and this was found. So it had been walled up, and I think I'm not sure whether it's to ward off evil.
Sort of, yes. I mean, sort of.
It's not part of a topping off ceremony.
It's not usually. No, it's meant to be sort of more a protective thing. I mean, sometimes you get mummified cats, which is a bit more gruesome.
It has a lot of staircases. It's obviously very interesting staircase. Yes, it's an interesting book. So, as Austin said, the staircase is fine, but there is a great bar across.
When we came here, these were bare RSJs. This room was really, really well. Firstly, it had old Christmas decorations strung up from the girders. The plaster work was completely it was old, and I don't know how to describe it. It was sort of buff with cracks, and not serious cracks, but we had Kemps of Skirler did the work to enclose the RSJs.
There's a lot of stuff. And they obviously were told by the agents, you'll get more for it if you essentially tart it up. So they converted a bedroom into an ensuite. Of course, ensuites add to the value of a house, apparently. And they renewed a bathroom upstairs because, as then as now, new bathrooms apparently are significant in persuading people to buy something. So these are the original shutters, as far as I assume they were, and they come up. They pick up all sorts of rubbish on the way, and they're really very effective at shutting out the light, not the draft, of course.
They must shut out the draft.
So that's the party trick. No extra charge for the party trick. I don't know if it's security or.
Well, both, but here you've only got them downstairs, haven't you? So
yes,
it's security as well as heat and light, but definitely
downstairs
downstairs
for security, presumably, and for light. But they don't. They're well balanced. It took a long time for the bloke to get them to balance all this. It is what comes with an old house, and if you want to restore the features, so we live with the draft comes up, but we've got the original shutters, and for a while I used the original shutters, but then Barbara said, "Why is your house all so grim looking?" So I thought, Barbara being Barbara, I'd follow her orders and free up the shutters.
If you walk down Railway Street, as you're walking down towards the station, on the right hand side there's a terrace that's sort of similar in date to this, and you can see that they have the same half. Sometimes people have them halfway up.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So they're original, I think.
Yes, oh yes, definitely.
I then had a conservation officer come around here for some advice, and I told him this story about the horses and leaving the mark on the bricks, and he confirmed it. He said it could well be that's the case, that the horses waiting for their wagons to come from the wagon making company next door.
The famous invention.
The clock and changing the times deliberately. I'm not quite sure how that would have worked.
So they didn't have, you know, they could say it's
It's
the end of the
5 o'clock,
day.
it's time we left.
Yeah, but it's a security feature.
It's a very nice desk you've got there, Roger.
Yes, I can't remember where that came from. Polished up. But when we bought it, we didn't quite know what to do with this room because it's obviously designed for different social circumstances to the ones we've got now. Kind of big and long. So we tried various things. There was a television there at one point. Interestingly, now there's no television. We don't watch any television. So we haven't got the issue of where we put the TV. But and when I was up then on my own, I didn't use it at all because it seemed to be too big. And then I went to Boynton Hall, and at Boynton Hall, you know, those who've been into the kitchen, the most, if you like, humble part of the Boynton Hall estate with all these wonderful rooms. The kitchen has been divided up into 3 areas, which is our everyday living space. One of it is the kitchen bit and the eating, and another one is writing bills and cheques and things like that, household business. And a third was kind of like a sitting and relaxing area. So based on that, I thought, well, I'll divide this room up into 3 bits, and this when books took over somehow. But that was an idea when we were 3 or 4 people could sit round, so it made the space more manageable. It's a great, relatively big space to organise. And then this was the writing and studying.
Down too.
Far too big for a small parish church, really, but they were going to go big time and show it off. Very, very religious, met the Pope and everything else, the whole family did, and so they were big into it. So it would have had a bell tower here as well, which again was taken down in 1982, which I think is a show. But Francis Johnson was the architect who did all the alterations for that. So it's typically Georgian.
Everybody says, was that the original drive? It never was. It was always just designed as a vista. And we have our Everingham Ghost walks it now and again. So it's supposed to come from there because there used to be a train station at Harswell, and they say he was in the First World War and been injured out, suffering terrible injuries and burns, and he was walking home through the woods, coming up here, and never made it home.
So Robert Constable was actually one of the 3 who were, along with Robert Ask and Thompson Darcy, who were involved in the pilgrimage of Briggs. Long waffle, but really bringing it up to the emancipation of the Catholics around 1829, and was the final sort of large Catholic relief act where if you were Roman Catholic, you were actually allowed to fully participate in society again. You could become an MP, you weren't persecuted. So, as a wealthy family who had stayed loyal to Rome, the obvious thing to do was maybe get the solid dance and build this chapel. If you have a strong faith and it means so much to them, then how can you show it more to everybody how much it means than doing something about it? You've got the money to do this. I don't think it was just about showing off. I do think this was very much but this would have been one of the first large-scale Roman Catholic places of worship after the Emancipation.
Anyway, coming more up to that, when we came here, there was still a congregation. There was a small trust, which was sort of not really operating, but they locally, there was a lot of Catholic families in the area used to come here every Sunday as the occasional baptism wedding, and they paid the priest from the to come. The principal architectural features of the chapel. Statues. These are plants who not flower marble. There is a legend that originally come out in Italy, in Carrara, and the ship was bringing them here south, and Lord Beverley wanted to do that. So he commissioned an Italian called Zoni, who remade all things in Covent Garden, the studio in Covent Garden, in plaster. Then someone knows how to transport it behind, I imagine by barge in those days, in massive crates. I can't imagine how we got them here. Two of them were exhibited in Westminster Hall, St Andrew and St John, I think, were exhibited in Westminster Hall before being brought here. And these bas reliefs are also showing the same life of Christ. Those of you that know about stories will be able to pick out the various stories.
The statues as well, because they hadn't arrived in time, during the consecration, the niches were all empty, the statues were still due to arrive.
Yeah, they do.
Maybe that's where the legend of the ship sinking comes from. It's a good excuse, isn't it?
There is a dedication to drawing Latin, so there's a Greek Latin trial. He was married to Nancy Vavasor, who the Vavasor family lived at Hazelwood Castle. And he was the one that he petitioned to get his title back, because of course, as Joe was saying, for a couple of hundred years, the Catholic families were penalised when this family had a lot of lands taken off them and had a lot of matters even going into Lincolnshire market raising around there, and they lost a lot of property and were heavily fined. But he went to the House of Lords, committed privileges, and he got his title back and called himself the 10th Lord Herries. I think there'd been a couple missing, but they counted them in anyway. And so he was quite a phenomenal character, I think, really. And 16 children. And they met the Pope in the war, almost first 10 notions, but very avid Catholics. And there was a convent school here. There was apparently used to come across, the nuns came to Mass across the lakes, in the Serpentine Lake. On the side, there were two bridges, and then the walled garden, which is gone now, and the convent over near the Bridge Hall.
The organ was put in from new for when the building was erected, and it was actually built by a chap in Soho, and it was a Catholic family, so all the works that would have been done